As you know, Measure Z was approved, and we have the funding back for the parks. As part of the condition of that approval was the setting up and the establishment of a citizens-based oversight and advisory committee. And with that function was set up, and it's primarily an audit function. And the residents discussing about the activities of that committee and what they can and can't do, and the need for something that is more forward-looking for the park designs of the city, with activity-based, perhaps trails, something forward-looking, not like the purpose of the Oversight Advisory Committee is basically an audit function of how the monies are spent on Measure Z. So after discussions with residents and them forwarding that information up to the council members, the city council directed staff to look into this concept. Staff met with the Parks Subcommittee during January. We had a workshop type meeting there about asking some questions. How would this be formed? What would the purpose be? Those types of questions. And what the outcome of that meeting was to bring it to the next step, which would be the city council, to firm up those directives, to give back to staff. What do you specifically want to see when we form the parameters and policies and set up the ordinances for this specific commission? So that leads us to the next slide, where we talk about this commission. What type of a commission are we looking forward to? Is it a Parks and Rec commission? Is it a Trails commission? Some of the other cities and agencies have used a lot more of an umbrella approach for their commissions, what they call a community services commission, where you can handle more activities than just Parks and Rec. CDBG could be folded under there. There's a number of items. Emergency management services, the training for the CERT team and races and those types of things. So we need to establish, staff is seeking direction. What type of a commission? Parks Subcommittee was in favor and supportive of a community services style of commission. So I want to share that with you. Membership. How many do we want? 5 members, 7, 9 members on this committee? And what would the makeup of this be? And would they all be residents? Would they be business owners? Would they be students? What in particular are some of your thoughts? Subcommittee was favoring 5 members, I believe residents living within the city limits, and supported by, I believe, 1 student representative from one of the high schools. So that was their thoughts. Terms of office, are they appointed, are they appointed by council at large or individually? Like planning commission, you have your own commission that you bring forward to the council to review and appoint, or would we do it like we did with the executive, like we did with the advisory committee, where we brought together a number of candidates at once, and you voted on that slate all at one time. So we have that to consider. The terms of office, 2, 3, or 4 years, staggered, every 2 years, every 4 years. How would you like? What's your recommendation? And the election of officers on this particular committee, would that be for 1 year? Would we call them president, vice president, chair, or vice chair? What's your preference there? And would those terms, which they would select amongst themselves, would that be for 1 year or 2 year terms? Just some of the thoughts. Like to hear a little. Staff is looking for some direction from council tonight on that. And then our next step would be to go back and actually, Tom and I, start writing up all the policies, the ordinance, all the criteria, and bring that back to you for your review and consideration for approval. So, having said that, do we go to council discussion, or does the public have an opportunity to weigh in on this now?
Public comments? Beyond the, okay. Council?
Okay.
Well, I definitely like the idea of the Community Services Commission, excuse me. So it's much more broader to encompass things like Gary had mentioned, definitely. I suggest 5 commissioners, and I suggest at large. That's how we did before the Measure C. I don't, 2 years I think is good. Stagger them. So I guess we'll have to do 2 or 3 or 2 or 4. And they can always continue if they like it, and they want to continue their time. Chair and vice chair is fine with me. So do we need to name exactly what we want?
I think we're just in staff direction to work to put this together.
Yeah, parks, recreation, trails, CDBG grants, CERT training.
So Gary, is this a common thing in other cities to cover all those items like that with one group? And is that not going to slow the group down a little bit, trying to look at all these things when the focus originally was parks and trails?
Correct.
Worried that if we open up to all this other stuff, we might overburden the group.
Excellent point. And some of the other cities, what they rely upon is subcommittees of that commission. So the commission would set up a subcommittee, go out and research a particular activity or event, or that's how they would handle those types of numerous range of activities within that. So it's very economical having 5 commissioners being appointed at large. 2 years, if terms were longer, that would help get some stability and kind of.
So you want 4 years?
I would think 4 years would be, a good.
Well, can we stagger them like we did with the other ones? Like
Yeah.
2 and 4 and stagger.
I think we thought 4-year terms were appropriate, but the first group would be 2 and 4 just to keep them staggered.
Right.
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 And yeah.
I mean, with subcommittees, really it can be endless because they can be coming with us with their own ideas of what they want.
Which is why I'm a little worried about overtaxing staff. Put all this out in the subcommittee, and that subcommittee starts doing all these various things, and staff's having to support that. I'm just worried we're stretching staff a little thin. Staff feels comfortable with it, I'm fine with it.
And also, it would depend upon the level of authorities that you're looking to have this commission extend. Is it strictly advisory? Are you going to have them be able to direct staff on particular items or activities? We will work out some recommendations for you on that.
I would envision more of an advisory role, maybe on maybe.
I'd like to see kind of like the planning commission. And maybe there's some things they can approve, and we need your research to see what things could be. And I also think that we need to get the parks open first. We need a parks director. We need to have some programs started at least for them to be advisory about. I mean, right now they're closed. We don't have anything, but I'm definitely in favor of a committee. I just don't see forming one tomorrow until we get things up and running.
Well, looking at today's agenda, I'd love to have had a recommendation on one particular issue coming forward later on.
Yeah. Well, so they would be researching and bring it back down.
Yeah, this is excellent guidance for staff, so we'll go ahead and pursue that.
Did we get the schedule? I was thinking monthly, or quarterly or monthly. What does staff feel?
I think that's a hard thing to decide now until we have it open.
Yeah.
What we got to work with. How much time is it going to take them to do this? And planning is scheduled monthly, but they don't always meet monthly because there always isn't something that needs to be done. So I'd like to see something more open-ended.
We will, through our research, we will bring forward some recommendations.
Okay. The report to council.
Sure, we'll need to have a set schedule.
Yeah.
We'll have to
So
build that into
monthly, or could it be a quarterly set schedule?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, special meetings.
Yeah. The reports to city council, what would that entail? Are you talking about bringing the body here at a council meeting to report, or just one member reporting back to us the
The chair can come
presentation?
back.
You know, we outline goals and objectives for them, and then have them report back maybe budget time or what their desires are for next year's budget activities. And then annually, have them report on how successful or, how did they work towards their mission and purpose? Were they accommodating that? What were the roadblocks? And that type of report is what I was thinking. How about year-end wrap up?
Well,
And recommendations for,
will our parks subcommittee be part of that meetings when they meet? Or, that's going to be hard for you guys if you're on that. Or do they bring it back to you guys and
Because
discuss
maybe
it?
we don't need to have the parks.
Karen, can I comment on something real quick?
Sure. Our fire chief can comment.
What do other cities do?
Pardon the interruption. I just wanted to give you some food for thought. We've discussed CERT and emergency preparedness and things like that for this council. And I want to caution you that when you roll responsibilities like that, and Shelley will back my play on this, our recommendation would be as an advisory council, because when you have them setting policy outside of council's pleasure, it does affect your public safety providers, because we are the primary contact and coordinators for that. So I'm not saying one way or the other, I'm just giving you some food for thought.
That is some good thought.
Yeah, well, I only thought it would be an advisory thing anyway. Because it has to come back to us because we have to approve everything with money or whatever. So it still's got to show up here. Yeah.
Well, I have a couple of comments on this. One is, there's different funding sources for the various functions that these commissioners are going to be dealing with. And there's several large funding sources just for two of them, parks and trails, that seems like they're almost like separate functions because of their funding sources. So I worry a little bit about that, because the trails is going to have its own funding source, and yet the advisory is going to come out of a committee that may not be their interest, because they have all these interests. So I worry about a structure like that. So it's a whole question of representative membership that I'm interested in. How do we get representative membership on this commission, so that each of the functions they really have to advise on, we've got a member on it for it.
I think we start slow and give them something to start with, and then if we need to add, if we see we can do a subcommittee or somebody is able to handle that, we may be able to add to that. Cities have a lot of different commissions, but it would be nice if we could keep them a little bit closer. We're a small community and we kind of like to do things together. So I think just starting it small, starting with the parks, and maybe then adding the trails, maybe then adding something else, whatever it may be that the community needs. And it may be a separate commission that we need. We may grow faster than we think.
Bob, are you suggesting like one person's appointed to trails on the commission and one person's appointed to parks and one person's appointed?
I don't know, that would be one way to do it, because you at least have that function covered by somebody who's really interested in it, if you're going to do them all. So the other thing is, how do you select from the community? Now, it was very difficult for the parks. The slate thing didn't work for me, so I don't know how we're going to select it. Maybe we can have some ideas come out as to how we're going to get a representative community selection from the east side, from the west side, from the people that are over 65. I won't say old people.
Well, that will be your guy.
for those with young children and so forth.
Bob appreciates that.
They all have different interests, so to get a representative, that's going to be a trick.
Yeah.
Well, then we could do it like we do planning commissioners, just have each one of us appoint somebody, and then have a student that's on the panel also, and that would be 6 of them. And they're not setting policy, they're just advisory.
That's,
And you can, I mean, we can get everybody to turn all their names in, and we can just pick people
that's
and be
kind of
responsible for
what
that
we
person.
did with Measure Z. Bridget
Yeah,
and I
we
got
were
them
trying
all,
to be diverse when we-
and we didn't discuss them. She went through them and I went through them, and I picked 5, and she picked 5, and then we brought them back to you guys, but you
Right.
still had all of them there, and.
We
the
had all of
entire
them,
council
but
decided-
basically a slate was elected, and I didn't have really a chance to influence that slate because people had already talked about it.
Well, no, they hadn't,
You voted.
because Bridget and I, neither one talked about it. I picked 5, she picked, we didn't agree.
Well, maybe you're all in concord,
I
may
but
not pick the same
I don't
five.
know that you got who you wanted maybe necessarily, but the council picked them. It was not a slate we brought back. and said, "This is who
I did not vote for anyone that got elected, so, I know, it takes 3 votes, but I just wondered about getting the representation. I like the idea of us maybe having somebody we would focus and point to the thing, because I guess that would take care of whatever complaint I had.
So you're asking for each person to get their own appointee?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and there goes your terms of office, they would follow.
Yeah,
Yeah, then they would follow us in terms of office.
Yeah.
Be similar to the planning commission.
yeah. It really needs to be a little more stable, I think,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and separate from us.
Yeah.
Well, I voted for everybody on the slate. How many was I supposed to vote for? I thought there was like
Well,
10
no,
I was allowed to vote for.
We discussed,
No, I'm just
because
kidding.
Bridget and I did not agree. We discussed several at the end, and finally, the council came to agreement on that 5th person, 4 I think we agreed on,
Well,
separately without
anyway,
discussing them.
that was my perception of it. I'm not going to go back and beat that thing up. I'm just thinking that I like the idea of the appointing.
So is that enough direction?
Yes, that's fine.
Just show us something, so we'll figure out something. Show us a slate
Do
of
I need
things
to
we can
take
pick
any
from.
action?
No, there's
Thank you.
just a direction.
You are directed at this point. And if you understand what you're directed to do, you get a raise. Debbie?
Item 3.4, amendment of solid waste ordinance